What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we will be reviewing V for Vendetta. Happy November the 5th, everyone. This is a film that is extremely important to me, and I really wanted to get this review out to you on the 5th of November because if you've seen V for Vendetta, or even if you've heard of it, you know. Remember the 5th of November. It is such a famous line of dialogue, and it is such a famous film in general. So V for Vendetta takes place in London in the near future, and it's about a totalitarian government that has outlawed art, there's a strict curfew placed on everyone in the population, and in general, the government is just extremely unstable and very poorly ran, and destructive to its citizens. And one night when our main character, Evie Hammond, played by Natalie Portman, bumps into V, played by Hugo Weaving, it takes us on a spiral of emotions, ups and downs, in a truly epic tale. And on that character of V, he is essentially someone who has been labeled a terrorist by this government. V is someone who is rising up against this government, pointing out the wrongs, pointing out the hypocrisy, and he is rebelling against it, which is another reason why this film means so much to me. Movies about rebellion against authority are always going to have a special place in my heart. And it is based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore, which I have read and I adore. This is by far my favorite graphic novel of all time. It is sprawling, so many great characters, so much amazing art. I mean, seriously. This thing is just look at it, man. So much, like, gothic imagery and deep characters and amazing artwork and moments. It is such a good graphic novel, and I highly suggest it to anyone, even if you aren't into graphic novels. So V for Vendetta is a movie that was actually really brave of the Wachowskis to make, and that's because it came out in 2005, just 4 years after a devastating terrorist attack on the United States, which is where I live. Now, the reason that this was so brave of them is because the film is presenting you a character who has been labeled a terrorist, and it's trying to get you to sympathize with him and to root for him. However, the situation is obviously extremely different because the government in this film is truly destructive to its people and borderline evil. So it's not like the filmmakers are like, hey, terrorists are actually good people. That's not what it's saying. V is not a terrorist, he's just been labeled as one. Now, a lot of people who haven't seen this movie just assume it's an action movie starring Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving, directed by the people who made The Matrix. But I think to call this film an action movie is a enormous disservice to the film itself. There are great action sequences in this film, and there's a lot of very good fight choreography and fight scenes, but they are few and far between. This film is more focused on the political and socio-economic side of this kind of a situation, the psychological side of it, how it affects people, and how people can come together to rise up against a government that is failing to protect them. So yeah, in many ways it is very relevant to today, because back in 2005, obviously, it gained a lot of attention because of 9/11, but how does it hold up today? Well, it holds up extremely well. Seriously, not an ounce of this movie has aged at all. It's aged like a fine wine. And V is one of my favorite movie characters of all time. You never see his face. He was a victim in a severe fire accident, and so he covers up every part of his body. He has an amazing costume, an amazing mask, which I also have the mask. It has been in the background of every one of my videos sitting on that bookshelf. You guys just don't know it. I do have the V for Vendetta mask, and this is actually wood carved. It is a very good quality mask. Voila! This is a beautifully directed movie, by the way. Seriously. Remember when I said that this movie is epic? It really is, and I don't want to spoil anything because I know there are a lot of people who have not seen this movie, despite how popular it is. But there are so many moments in this film that are directed so well to get the maximum emotional reaction out of you that it possibly can. It really feels like you are watching a revolution happen in real time. It also has an incredible script. Seriously, the back and forth between V and Evie is truly masterful. The film has a lot of questions on its mind, and it's asking you to contemplate a lot of really complex ideas and themes in regards to government and politics and religion. And they did a really good job of getting you to hate the people running this government. I hated them because they do all these terrible things to these people, and the things that they say and their viewpoints and their worldviews that are just the most close-minded, bigoted things you'll ever hear. Seriously, they do a very good job of getting you to hate these people, which is why you kind of side with V when you see what he's doing. Now, I said that script is great, and there is a monologue in this film known as the V Monologue. Now, if you don't know, I am a theater kid, and there is a competition where I am called Trumbauer that does go to the international level. I decided to participate this year, and the monologue that I decided to audition with and perform at the competitions is the V Monologue. I know the whole thing by heart. And it is such a powerful monologue. It really gives you a lot of insight into this character and what he stands for. It's one of those movies that really makes you want to do something. You know what I mean? Like, it makes you want to rise up against people who are not giving justice where justice is due. It makes you want to rebel. It makes you want to stand up for what's truly right. And I think films like that are just so few and far between nowadays, and they are extremely valuable. Now, I know I'm talking about all this stuff about this movie, but don't get me wrong. There are action sequences in this film, and they are extremely well filmed, though that's not going to come as a surprise to anyone who has seen The Matrix, because this was also made by the Wachowskis. The point is, they are some incredible action sequences. They feel ripped from the pages of the graphic novel, honestly. And a lot of it is hand-to-hand combat and knife play, which you don't see a lot anymore in action movies. You don't see a lot of knife fighting choreography and things like that. Most of the action movies nowadays, it's just a bunch of shootouts that get old after a while. And Hugo Weaving as V, this might be my favorite performance of his, in competition with his performance as Desmond's father in Hacksaw Ridge. Which is even more astounding because, like I said, you never see his face. He's constantly wearing that mask. And yet somehow you grow to care about him so much, and you care for him so deeply, and you recognize how traumatized of a man he is, that it makes events later in the film that much more emotionally powerful. It is such a well-written script. And same with Evie. There's a lot of things about Evie and V that are very different, and there's also a lot of things about them that are strikingly similar. And it's that right there, that specific aspect of this film, that makes V's transformation of Evie into who she eventually becomes. You know, he's kind of the catalyst of her arc in the film. It makes it that much more effective. And speaking of Evie's arc, it is a great one. This is one of my favorite character arcs of all time, and I think it's one of the best character arcs of all time. It is so masterfully executed. There's a long sequence in this movie where you're made to believe that something is happening, and then it's revealed that something completely different was happening. But during the period of time when you thought that what was happening was what was actually happening, you are with Evie and for the entire thing, and you are just so in the moment and intrigued and sucked into it, and it's so beautifully tragic and dark. And that's another thing too. This movie did not hold back. It is rated R, it's violent, and there's a lot of very heavy subject matter, and it's not afraid to get dark. And that's something I'm always going to appreciate in films. Films that don't care about censorship. Films that recognize that they need to show what they need to show, and they need to express what they need to express in order to tell the story that they want to tell. Now look, I love The Matrix, but to this day, V for Vendetta might be my favorite film that the Wachowskis have ever worked on. It's such a well-crafted film, incredible performances. This also might be my favorite Natalie Portman performance, though I still need to see Black Swan. I really need to see Black Swan. She is so great in this movie, and she's not just this damsel in distress character. No, she's a very strong female protagonist, which is another thing that I'm always going to love. And even though this came out in 2005, in a lot of ways, it was ahead of its time. Because looking back at it now, especially after going through 2020 and the majority of 2021, it is so almost painfully relevant to today, which really just makes it that much more powerful. If anything, this film has gotten better with time. And it's scary, because while the government now isn't, you know, anywhere near the level of the government in this movie, it's sad when you're watching the movie because it doesn't come off as implausible. Like, it actually, like, I'm watching, I'm like, I actually kind of believe that the government could end up like this one day, and that's just such a scary thought to contemplate. Now, I talked about the finale fight, but the finale of the film itself, the payoff, so to speak, the scene that delivers the payoff of everything that is built up throughout the film is epic. It is one of my favorite movie finales of all time. See, there's movies that have epic moments, there's movies that actually are epics, but I think that there's more than one kind of epic. Action epics, mystery epics, and my favorite is the emotional epic. For example, Titanic for me is an emotional epic. It's not an epic because usually, an epic is defined as a story with like this huge spectacle and lots of like grand scale action and everything. With Titanic, I would say the third act of that movie is an epic, but the movie as a whole is an emotional epic. And I would put V for Vendetta in between those ranks, between epic and emotional epic. You know what? I'm gonna make up a new term. I'm gonna say that V for Vendetta is a political epic. It has so many thought-provoking questions on its mind about government and the way governments are run and the way people respond to it and how a government can kind of force-feed you things and manipulate you into doing things that you wouldn't have done otherwise. How it can make you betray your own personal beliefs and morals just for the sake of pleasing them. A lot of stuff like that, and I love those types of conversations, those questions, and this movie asked them in such a unique way and executed its story in also an extremely unique way that I've never really seen before for a movie like this. Now, I explain all that to flesh out that build-up and what I'm saying about the third act of this movie and the finale of it being epic. It's an extremely emotionally satisfying finale that somehow manages to have some really tragic stuff in there, and that's the resolution for certain characters, and yet it still manages to be emotionally satisfying. Very, very few movies can do that. But this one did it. Guys, V for Vendetta is one of my favorite movies of all time. Movies about vengeance and rebellion are always going to mean a lot to me because I can really dig deep into those stories and I have a lot personally that I can relate to with those stories. I'm always going to love stories like this. Stories about vengeance and rebellion and tragedy, those things are always going to mean a lot to me. And those are actually my three favorite types of storytelling. We're actually putting on a production of Macbeth right now in theater, and I was cast as Banquo, which I'm still shocked by. Like, I'm in 11th grade, but this is my first year at the school that I'm currently going to, and the fact that my theater director decided to cast me in a lead role in Macbeth, knowing that it was my first year here, is insane to me. Man, I'm very, very excited to be in Macbeth. I mean, it's Macbeth. That's crazy. So yeah, guys, V for Vendetta is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely adore it, and I'm going to give V for Vendetta an A+. So guys, V for Vendetta, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Let me know down in the comments. Just make sure to stay friendly. We're all friends here. And also, what is your favorite tragedy film? What is your favorite revenge film? Just anything that has to do with revenge and tragedy and vengeance and vendettas and all that stuff. Also, let me know, what are some of your favorite political thrillers? And one last thing before I go, I did finish my Halloween special. It was 12 episodes long. I'm very proud of those videos, though not a lot of people watch them, so I'm gonna link the playlist right up there. I don't know which side to point to right now because I always forget how it's gonna show up on the screen, so I'm gonna show it right up here. There you go. There's the card. Go watch all those videos, please, because I worked very hard on them, and I am very, very proud of them. And that's all I gotta say. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.